All right, we're live. It's human condition. Let me adjust everything. This is the best part of the human condition is the first 10 minutes, me messing with technical things. I'm waiting for Monk to get on anyway. But yeah, tonight our special guest is Monk Coleman. Um, if you haven't read this book yet, Love Over Fear, it's an easy read. It's one of the things that really impressed me about this book is he takes some really high concept spiritual traditions and religious traditions and these concepts that can miss us because they feel too complex. He just makes it so simple. It's really a beautiful book. So if you haven't done it yet, I would implore you to get this book. It's I'm impressed. But let me see. I don't see Monk here yet. Let me hold the book up. Love Over Fear. 80 pages. Yeah, I mean, it condenses it to 80 pages. And not only is it, does he lay out the principles in a real simple way, there's work steps. So it's a workbook where you can actually work the steps after. This would be a great book for any 12-step program or, is this Monk here? There's someone. Oh, he's saying the link is not working. Just 1 second. Let me get this to him. Man, technical difficulties. Talk amongst yourselves. All right, let me invite him real quick. Sorry, guys. I will perfect this stuff one day when I get older. One day when I grow up, I will be technically inclined. I'm a beast in Atari. Tecmo Bowl, you don't want none. I'll school you. Give me Bo Jackson, that's your ass. All right, Joe, I'm coming to the rescue. Let's see if this gets him on. You guys check out Amazon while I'm doing this, because like I said, $10. It's one of the quickest reads ever as it pertains to the principles he speaks of, and I'm just impressed. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, I think we're back to normal now. We're here. We're live on Facebook. Monk, can you hear me? So how's 2021 treating everybody? Better than 2020? I heard so many people say, "Oh yeah, I can't wait for 2020 to be over." For what? What did you think was going to happen? You think the year was doing it? 2021's like, gotcha, suckers. Let's rock this out. Oh, there he is. Look at that. 9:05 on the button. We're actually going to be started. It didn't take 15 minutes this time. I got skills. There he is. I can't hear you, Monk. There he is connecting.
Oh, there we go.
There you are.
Ooh, the struggle is real.
Believe it or not, this 5-minute thing right here, that's a record for me. I'm usually struggling well into 15 minutes. So I triple booked meetings tonight too. So I didn't even, I was like, oh, I got the podcast. So I had to rush these guys out, these investors at like 8:55, got them out the door. And, but I was supposed to be on another call until 8:30. Such is life. But how you doing?
Good. I'm doing good, man. Just, I was trying to get you on the computer, but now I got you on my phone. That's the only way I could do it, but we are here.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah, I was telling people a little bit about the book, and I've been telling people ever since I read it.
I'm like, you got to go get this. I know some people went on Amazon last night and picked it up. But it's just the principles, like I know, right? So I read the book and I know what you're talking about. I've been there. So it resonates with me in that way, and I knew it would. But looking at it from a perspective of, once you go through that dark night of the soul and you get to the other side, we're still doing work, but now we can give back a little bit. The question is always, well, how do we give back in a way to where people don't have to go through the trauma we went through to get to the realizations that we needed to get to? And is there a way to do that? In that book, it really, because of its simplicity and the way you use your life to correlate with the principles you lay out there, it's one of those things to where, a teenager can pick it up, read it, and just carry it with them. You can actually gauge the steps you're taking in life against this little workbook. I can see myself giving these things out to people. I used to always do 4 agreements, right? It's an easy read. It's a nice segue in. But I can see myself giving out this. Somebody asks, I'm not much of a reader. I get that a lot. Here you go. You don't have to be.
Right.
Really bullet pointed for you, and it'll guide you through. But I just want to say I'm impressed by it, and I think it's going to do big things.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I wanted to be practical and simple, but like we were talking the other day, I also wanted it to be for the people that know they're on this spiritual path. They're going to see things that other people might not see in it, right? So it's like little hidden messages in there that if you're aware, that you're going to pick them up. Yeah. But if you're not aware of it, you're still going to see things you can implement in your own life that just seems pretty straightforward. You know what I mean?
And you will come back and pick those principles up. Like as you evolve, you'll come back and you'll read that. You'll be like, oh, that's what was there.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I wanted to make it like that. It's I didn't want to overcomplicate it because I read a lot, and I know you read a lot, and you have to be a certain place in your life to really read something like the books that we read and be able to understand them. And I know they're not for everybody. Right. I wanted to make something for everybody. I wanted to make something that I can put into institutions, schools, prisons, rehabs, things like that. Things that it's not religious. It's just life. Things we can do in life to improve our life, to really align us, to get us aligned with living our purpose and to give us some peace in our life, right? It's always there for us, but sometimes we just don't align with it. So there's certain steps you can take, simple steps that you can take that might get you to that place to where you go, okay, I'm feeling good. I'm in the groove. These things that I'm doing, they're working. Not saying that you're not going to have struggles, because you are, but these can help you to circumvent these struggles. You don't have to struggle so long if you have some tools to use when these times come up.
Well, and that's what you can gauge them against the book. It asks the right questions, and you can really look at the steps you're taking, and in a non-judgmental way, you can really say, I either am or I'm not. That's the beauty of simplicity. I mean, Einstein said, if it can't be summed up if an equation, it can't be summed up in a sentence, it's no good. They talked about the beauty of E equals MC squared. Right. You know what I mean? Like there's a beauty to it because it's so simple. And when you finally get to it, that it's these kind of principles to where when I finally got to them and started implementing them in my life, it's how did I not, how did I not know that? Like, because we know it, there's an innate knowing, it's there. And then society pulls us away from that knowing. And then when we get back there, we're like, I could have done this all along. And this really exposes that in that kind of way to where it's like anybody can read it and say, they know the words, right? They know the words. There's no religion that separates it. It's not coming from a 12-step group that says, well, you got to be this to do this. Like those things, even though they're amazing programs in America, and they do a disservice sometimes because because they're this group, they separate you from another group. And maybe that's not the intent, but it does it, right? So, and that was the beauty of like Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, you know, how expansive is that? You know, it includes everybody. When you do something like that and you get something that's universal, that everybody can, you take away the stigma of those other things. Because for me, I didn't want to go to church because I heard the word God, and that didn't resonate because of my experience with religion as a kid. Kept me out of some great places that really would have benefited me when I was younger, just because I couldn't deal with that word. It didn't, you know. In this, there's none of that. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in there about race. There's, you know, I mean, you tell your experience, but it doesn't, it's just a man having an experience. And you can even take the man out of it too. You know what I mean? Because when you get to the principles, it's just these principles for people. And I think, I don't know if you intended that, if that, but it's a very clever way of laying it all out without throwing those things in there that might make people, well, I don't know if this is for me. Everyone wants an excuse to not do the work.
Right. Like, so, you know, I had a big hang up with the word God and all that too, because of my religious background. But I did throw it in there a couple of times, but I threw it in there in a different context. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
It could be whatever you want it to be. Right. Whatever your highest self is, whatever that power in your life is that can create any type of change in you or in your life. You know what I'm saying? So just, you can interchange it with universe, higher self, source, whatever you want to do. It doesn't, you know, Alan Watts, whatever, right? So, you know, Alan Watts, of course, you know, Alan Watts, but one of my favorite quotes by him is, the word water can't make you wet. So these words, right? Water does not explain what it actually is.
Right.
It's just a pointer. It just points to it. You still have to have your own experience with that water, right? So when you see the word water, it means nothing unless you've had the experience with it, right? So that's what I'm saying. So our experience with that word God was looked a certain way and felt a certain way until we realized what it really was. That was just a pointer.
Right.
There's something greater, something within ourselves.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't want to use that. I didn't want to put that in there. And I just wanted something that it made sense to everybody. It made sense to everybody.
It's like the golden rule. It makes absolute sense. You know what I mean? Like there's just, you read it and it's like, well, of course, you know, the 10 principles. I mean, I'm going to go into that real quick. I mean, and just, this is how it starts. And it's, I'm a wordy person. Like when I write, I hear words in rhythm. It's weird how, so I'll have these things coming out and it'll come out in a rhythm. Like there's a frequency to the way I hear, and then I put them out on paper. That's why Shakespeare was always easy for me. That iambic pentameter, I could flow into the rhythm of even if I didn't know what I was saying, like I could, the rhythm made sense to me. There was a frequency to it. So I'm always putting these book long posts out there that nobody reads. Some people do, but I mean, you're not going to, it's not for the audience. There's some people that are going to read it. Me, I just got to get it out there. So I have talented people around me when we do a movie or something that can do a tagline, because I can't, because I want to give context to it. You know what I mean? And that's maybe a flaw of mine, but it's just what I do. So I was like, man, I envy this, because I don't envy, but it's like, that's a talent I don't have. I don't, it's hard for me to simplify things, because when I start thinking, it's coming out, and then I'm like, I don't want to get away from that rhythm. That feels good. Let me just say this that way. And then it's going to flow this. And then and then this right here, it's like, I love that saying, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? Like, really, honestly, for the status quo, keep it simple. If you make it simple, they can delve in. But I want to read the 10 principles, and they're just so, of course, you know what I mean? So the 10 principles of transformation, and I won't get into. It's 2 pages. It's 2 pages. It's beautiful. So love, and then you delve into that. Gratitude, mindfulness and meditation, constructive mindset, consistency, be present, serve, failure, be proactive, stepping out of fear. You're better now. You know what I mean? Like, just do those things. Do those things. And there's a couple sentence explanation that explains it. Like me, I'd probably have 3 paragraphs for each one, or my pages maybe. And you just sum it up and it's like, okay, that's it. You know what I mean? That's it. That's it. We're done. Do those things now.
I just really wanted to get, like I said, I had a little personal, I put a little personal experience about my experience with whatever principle I'm talking about. And then I give you some steps to live from that place, right? It's so gratitude, my experienced gratitude and how I used it, or something that happened in my life where I really, had to shift and look at how thankful and grateful I am for something. And then I can show you, well, these are some steps you can take to live a life of gratitude, to be thankful for what you have, to be thankful for your relationships. You know what I'm saying? To be thankful for everything that you have in your life. And if we don't do that.
Do you want to tell people a little bit about where you, like, how you came up and, because I think me and you both are unlikely people to be sitting here having this conversation. You don't know a whole lot about my past, but it was checkered to say the least. You know what I mean? Like it, and I know yours was too. And we haven't talked about it too much, but I know enough to know that I can relate. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what led to the inspiration?
Yeah. So I had there's a part in the book called My Story, and it's a few pages. And I think that really, I didn't go too deep into what my lifestyle was, but I pretty much broke it down where I was, what I was doing, and what was the impetus for me to make changes. Well, it happened in about going on 13 years now, where I was in Miami and I was partying like I usually do. You don't think you have a problem because you party like everybody else. You don't think, you're an alcoholic or you have a drinking problem, right? Until something manifests because of it. So one morning I woke up after the first night I got there, and I was peeing blood the next morning. I said, oh, this is a problem. I was already depressed. I was already really anxious. At this point, I'm in my 30s, and I don't know what do I do? What is it all about? You get to a point, and I think it really happens around that age, where late 30s, where you're going, is this it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I can
like, is this what I'm going to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
Is this what it's all about? Is there something deeper than this? Well, when that happened, I didn't know what to do. I was in a very, very, very dark place, and I struggled with it for months. Still drinking, still doing, and that's when I really realized, I'm like, I got a problem.
Yeah.
Like, I got a problem. And then one day after a party, I said, that's it. I got to make this choice. I gotta choose one way or the other, because by default, I'm choosing to check out if I don't stop doing what I'm doing. So that's a choice.
Yeah, even though it's a choice, no matter what, it's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah. So I chose to stop that day, and I said no more. My daughter was just very young. My last daughter, my second daughter, and I said, okay, let's do this. So I forced her to stop. And and I know, anytime you force something, if it's just a forced stop, eventually you'll go back to doing whatever, right? Whatever you needed to take care of. Drinking wasn't my problem. Why I was drinking is the problem.
Right.
Right. So when you force a stop and you still want to do it, you're just stopping because it's the best thing for you. If you eventually it's gonna build up pressure, and you're gonna go back to doing what you're doing. Right. It happens all the time. There's people that go to rehab 20 times and still they haven't dealt with what they need to deal with that gets them to that point. They got them to that point. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I forced that stop. And at the time, I was a smoker drinker, right? So when I drank, I chain smoked cigarettes. But when I didn't drink, I didn't really smoke. It was just, they all came together. All
Yeah.
my things that I did all came behind alcohol.
Mm.
So every time I drank, I did everything else.
Everything else.
All the behaviors, all the drinking, the smoking weed, all that, I did all of that. When drinking was a common denominator, right? So I stopped that. So for about a year, I didn't know what to do with myself. Like literally didn't know what to do with myself. And I was like smoking cigarettes. And that's something I never did unless I was drinking. But I needed to do something. I was so anxious, like, dang. Yeah. Like everybody still kicking it and doing their thing. And I'm just like, I didn't tell nobody about this. I'm just like, now I'm cool on the alcohol. But what happened is something, I don't know where I heard it or something, meditation came up. So I'm really dealing with some stuff, not drinking. And it's a struggle. So meditation came up for me. I didn't even know anything about it. I was like, well, I need to do something because I'm not in a good place. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm sober right now, I'm still not in a good place. I don't know how to deal with things right now. So I said, well, let me try this. And I don't even remember what it said, but, basically it was like, sit down and be quiet. You know what I'm saying? Just basic, see what comes up. I didn't get into it deep, and I just started sitting. I started sitting every day. Every single day, sitting. And it seemed like things were getting, as far as, I wasn't feeling as anxious, right? I wasn't feeling as depressed, just sitting every day.
So when you're sitting, I know for me, and not to cut you off, we'll go back, but I'm just curious. I know for me, I couldn't sit with myself because I had that disease of perfectionism, just insecure. I couldn't sit in a room by myself because I thought I was doing it wrong, and I would judge me, and I'd be like, fuck this, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, so it takes a disciplined person to begin with. Or it could be a desperate person, somebody who I got to do something or I'm going to die, type thing. So it's, what was the mentality for you? Are you just naturally disciplined or?
Well, I think I didn't go into it. I think that benefited me, because I think if I would have went into it and like learned all the things that it would do for you and all this, I would try to guide my practice towards that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So I was so ignorant to it. I just started sitting down, and then my mind was super busy. It was super racing, scary.
But you didn't judge yourself?
No, I just kept doing
it. You didn't read into it. You just it said sit, so you sat.
Yep, that's it. And what happened was, I started internally, I started to think different, and I started to move different, and I started to look at people different. And I'm not even putting two together as far as this meditation thing, right? I'm like, okay. But then when physical things started to happen in my meditation, I really knew something was happening. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about crazy movements, involuntary movements. It's just, if I told you some of the stuff that was happening in meditation, and for a while, I didn't say anything to anybody because it's like, it was crazy. Like my body was doing things. These energies were coming up. Mm-hmm. You know about Kundalini, right? Yeah. So these energies started flowing just from sitting, right? And I was having crazy head rotations where I was like laying down. Every time I would start to relax, my body would just start moving. And then for about 1.5 years, it was doing that. And at this time, I was feeling so empathetic. I had so much empathy for people. I had so much compassion for people. And I even at one time started feeding the homeless. I just started when you start to be who you really are, when you start to be who you truly are, which is love, your life starts to reflect that.
Yeah, it does.
Like you start to do things when you start to get closer to who you really are, you start to do things that reflect that. So love is who we are. And when you start to work your way back to that, and that's what I was doing, not knowingly during meditation, is really showing myself love. When you start doing that, everything starts to change. Like your eyeballs see different. Yeah. You see people and you just want to help them. And it was really tripping me out because, back in the day, I was very selfish. Mm-hmm. It was all about me. And even 3 years into my meditation, I was sitting eating a vegetarian meal because meat didn't seem good to me at the time, right? I was like, I don't want any meat. I don't want no bacon. Usually I have bacon on there or, some kind of whatever on my omelet. And my friend that I was with said, are you a vegetarian? And I said, yes. This is another crazy thing, right? So I said yes to it, not knowing why, but knowing that I would never eat meat again. This was over 8 years ago. So when I left that breakfast, I started looking up like, what is going on? I was like, why did I answer it this way? And why do I know that I'm not going to eat meat anymore? It was like instant. So that question was supposed to be asked at that time when I was ready. And boom, just like that, synchronicities, right?
Yep.
So I looked it up and what it said was, because the only thing I've been doing is meditating. The connection between, I didn't know what a vegan was at that time, but the connection between vegetarianism and meditation. And basically, and I'm just paraphrasing here, this is what I got out of it, whatever I read, whatever links I opened up. It said I was making a connection to all life. And I didn't want to harm any other life at a deeper level, right? Not because it wasn't something that came from my conscious mind. It was deeper than that. It was like something else answered this question for me. It was so immediate. Are you a vegetarian? Yes. Never thought about it before in my life. But then I'm like, I knew it when I left it. That's what it was. And then, doing research after that, I realized, all the harm that's done in animal agriculture and things like that. And I became vegan. I didn't want any part of it. But those are the things, just organically, things start to change when you start to get present. Yeah. When you start to work your way back to love, your life's going to reflect love. So at that time, was my diet reflecting love? No, it wasn't.
No.
Right? No. Was my even my relationships, was that nothing in my life was reflecting love prior to this. And then all of a sudden now I'm looking at people on the street like, how can I help them? What can I do? Now I'm not even like in my diet or in my clothing. I don't want any parts of suffering. I don't want any parts of unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
So the more you move towards who you really are, the more you see things that you normally wouldn't see. You see the suffering in everything, and you want to help everyone. Yeah. I mean, you start to feel people, right? Yeah. You can feel people in the grocery store. You can tell when someone has a lot, there's something heavy on their heart. You can, see people and just know that they need something from you right now, as far as not anything physical, but they need you to send them some love, right? Yeah. A smile, something. You start to be able to, this energy. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. Your thoughts are energy. So I mean, you're so receptive to this stuff. When you start to clean out your own energy, you can really feel other people's energy. Right? Even when it comes to animals and everything else, you can really everything. Yeah, you're very sensitive.
Yeah. But in a good way,
In a good way.
In a good way. I was talking to Reverend Glenn a couple podcasts ago, and we were talking about duality. And and we're inherently dualistic because, well, whether you're a physicist and you believe matter came first and we're all an amalgamation of that, or whether you come from the mindset that it's spirit or consciousness first and then everything sprung forth from that, there's only one source. No matter how you look at it, there's only one source, and that source is energy, right? So no matter how you want to look at it, you can't really negate the fact that there's energy to everything. And then what are we, from a physics perspective? Subatomic particles, we're slowed down and we're collapsed into particles now. That's what we are. So really we're light suspended in suspended animation. So we're trapped, so it creates this tension that you're going to have in the human experience. And the whole thing is transcending that. Is like, okay, well, like Christ said, I'm in this world, but I'm not of it. So when you understand that, you can start going to this other space and feeling that oneness, and you can still walk around on this planet and you don't have to get hurt. When you feel people, you can compassion literally means to sit in suffering with another. That's the origin of the word, is to sit in somebody suffering with them. Right. So you don't have to hurt. You know what I mean? That can be a beautiful experience to be able to sit in that experience with them. I mean, your book, when I was reading it, it got me writing, right? So I started thinking about this, I started writing last night about people's inability to recognize difference in experience, right? I have a truth. That's my truth. And there's no negating that my life experience happened that way. And there's somebody next to me, they have a truth. That's their truth. And we may be in the same place at the same time, but we're going to experience it differently because of where we come from. Right. And recognizing that in other people is hard. We get taught that our way is our way and this is the truth. And if you don't do it this way, it's bad. And this way is good. But that your book got me writing about that. And then I just started bawling. I'm like, God damn it. I didn't want to do all this. And all day I'm writing little stuff like this. This is some of the most profound stuff I've ever written. It was on a chip bag that I was throwing out today because I had to stop. Yeah. I had to write, scribble on it real quick. But that's what can happen. It doesn't have to be painful. Like that wasn't a bad pain. It was like, I'm getting all this stuff out. I'm purging this and maybe there's somebody out there that can use it and they can use it to end some of their suffering. But yeah, it's when you get that energetic field open to just be energy, you know what I mean? To not be like, be like water, you know what I mean? Go where it takes you and don't judge it. Because as soon as you resist it, well, now you're going to have problems. You can't, there's a flow to the universe, right? You got to roll with it. That's hard to explain to somebody who's seen a lot of suffering and says they don't want to live that way. They take it as just let it be what it is, but that's not what it is. It's
you said purge, and how I describe meditation, because it was definitely a purge for me. That suppressed, repressed energy came up, came out, right? Yeah. I call meditation is the purging of the soul.
I can see that. Yeah.
The purging of the soul, like all the things that you're not.
That's what it is, right? All those responses, like the tension that you carry in your body and all the judgments that you have, that's all built. That didn't happen prior to you being here. So you come here as this perfect slate, this little baby, right? That's just perfect. And of whatever you want to call that source. And then you get thrown into this experience. And before you have an opportunity to really, you don't have a moral compass. So whatever you're getting programmed with in those first 3 years, that's what life is. Then you have to go out there, experience why it's not that. And then you got to do the work to unlearn it. It's, I think it's beautiful because I'm on the other side of it. But I didn't think it was beautiful when I was suffering through it. Right. I didn't know how to not suffer through it. Right. And it took trauma. It took severe amounts of trauma, almost dying several times, like you.
For most of us, it's like that. It's like, we got to get hit on the head hard enough to do something else.
Right. Unless, you know what I mean? But I think it may just be part of, this thing, and I don't know if you've ever, I know in meditation, you can cross over, right? I've done it in meditation, but ketamine was the thing. I was so controlling, so egotistical. No therapist could get through. Nothing could get through. But when I had that first psychedelic experience where the neural pathways opened up and I felt for the first time unconditional love that I was getting from my son, but I didn't know what it was. Like I wanted to run from it, but I kept trying to, and it was traumatic. And that opened that up and I could never unlearn that. You know what I mean? So once that happened, this flow came in and it started the journey. But for me, I needed that. If that didn't happen, I don't know what kind of trauma it would have taken for me to finally evaluate myself and say, well, maybe you're responsible for some of this. You know what I mean? Maybe you got to quit blaming people. Maybe it's time for you to just live differently. You know what I mean? We don't wake up wanting to do that. We want to blame. Right. We want to blame. We want to look at the external environment and,
Absolutely. It's always someone else's fault. You know what the biggest thing that meditation it probably did as far as teaching me something? Like you said, we all have our own individual experiences, but it got me to a point where I know that people are acting out their role, or they're acting out their program.
Yeah.
And I don't take it as personal, because I know that's not them. It can't be you acting this way. This is your program acting this way, right? If we could just go back and just simply take it back to your childhood, take it back to when you were a baby, the things that you were doing now would contradict what that baby would do back then.
Oh yeah.
That's how you know. That's how you know it's the program.
Yeah.
Right. That's how you know. So now that I know it's a program, it's not really you. Right. I could see you as a child. It's not really you. Now, not saying that I won't act upon whatever it is, but I'm not going to take it personally, because I know I used to be there too. I was living I play a role now, but I know I'm playing a role. Back then I was playing a role and I didn't know I was playing a role. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference.
You were that.
Right. I was that.
Yeah.
Right now I know, like, I'm here, I'm playing a role, but my role is coming from a loving place. And I'm gonna continue to play that role, right? That's my role here on earth. But prior to this role was me. This role was all the limits that came with that. This role was playing the victim. This role was everything. This role was the alcoholic. This role was violent. This role was a drug dealer. All of it. That was the role I was.
You didn't control any of it. You were a victim.
Right. I was. It was like everything that happened to me made me act a certain way that I identified with that. Right. But it really wasn't
to justify
me
it
for me. Absolutely.
And that's the difficult part is you look at, when you have checkered past and you have things with caregivers that, weren't ideal, you can go back and you can justify it. And that's the trick. That's the thing that gets you stuck, is because you can really point at, yeah, that happened. You know what I mean? Whatever our experience is. Yeah. And to break out of that is that's why I like this, because it puts responsibility on you immediately without getting too heavy into. I like what you said about meditation. You didn't know much about it. You just did it, and there's a huge value to just doing something without knowing what it is, to just psychologically, to take that leap. You're going to open new neural pathways. A lot of people won't do that, because it's scary to do no matter how harmless it is to sit by yourself and just let your mind go for a little bit. Like, it's harmless. It's literally harmless. Nobody's watching you and you can do it. But that scares the shit out of a lot of people. Scared the shit out of me. I couldn't do it.
So we're so overstimulated right now, right?
Yeah. Now. True.
Silence is so loud to people.
Yeah. Yeah. Scary.
Silence.
Something's wrong.
Because look, all the phones and everything, right? If you're quiet, it's super loud, and it's scary to a lot of people. People can't even sit 5 minutes without starting to do this and do that. If there's nothing to stimulate them,
right?
And that's why meditation is so powerful. When you sit down for that half hour, that hour, and deal with whatever comes up. And people think meditation is just have a clear mind and sit and with all this peace, and no. And it's not about resisting anything. When it comes up, you acknowledge that and you allow it to go once you realize you're gone, and just bring it back. So I always say, meditation, a meditative mind compared to a non-meditative mind. A meditative mind, let's go with the non-meditative mind first. It's like having a dog that's not trained on a leash, and the leash breaks. You're not going to get that dog back ever. The dog is gone. Yeah. It's not coming back. You're going to have to get in your car and go look around the neighborhood for this dog, right? Yep. So a meditative mind, and it's just the practice of bringing it back, The meditative mind is having a dog off leash, and then it sees something that it wants to go get, say a cat, and it starts to run after that cat, and you can call it back and it'll turn around and come back to you. You see what I'm saying?
That makes
so
sense,
you have, even though your mind will go stray, you can always bring it back. But that non-meditative mind, when that leash breaks, your mind is gone. It's
Yeah.
running. They ain't bringing it back.
Yeah.
And that turns into other things. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that makes up stories for you, you know, in your relationships. You know, something gets into your head and you just run with it. You know, it's still affecting you years down the line, even though you didn't know if it was true or not.
Right.
That type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what trauma that. So being that we are dualistic in nature, you know, I've become a huge study on trauma because my thing was PTSD, right? That was the pattern. You know, I don't own it. It's not me. I don't label myself with it, but that was a definite pattern. And when somebody, it wasn't until 2013, I think, that a psychiatrist, that was the first time I'd been diagnosed, because it's still fairly, people don't know a lot about trauma in the field. You got to get really high up the ladder to somebody like Bessel van der Kolk or Gabor Mate to really get into the people that study trauma, their deep studies and how the brain mechanisms work. The first time I ever had somebody, you know, I would hear things like, well, maybe you're bipolar. I'm like, maybe. Give me something, like, tell me what I am. Because I was really looking. I'm like, I didn't want to repeat these patterns. But this guy sat me down and he started saying, well, when this happens, does this happen? Oh, have you lose your train of thought completely and you can lose days? Yeah. He's like, those are called emotional flashbacks. That you have PTSD. And that was the first time I didn't attach to it, but I could understand myself and I had something to work on. That mind that you're talking about, I can now be mindful of the fact that I needed to call that part of me back when it started to get off its leash, because it would. And I found out real quick that logic wouldn't get me there. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I could think my way out of these situations, but the way trauma works is, well, no, if you go into fight or flight, you're not even getting into your neocortex, and let alone your frontal lobe. It's not happening. You're stuck here in the amygdala waiting to see whether or not you're going to have to fight for survival. And when it's as bad as I had it, well, I was always fighting for survival. Somebody takes my milk in school, that's life or death. You know what I mean? Like, there was no small thing to me. It was always, I'm going to die if I don't react to this now, not consciously, right? It's very automated. So that there's this space between stimulus and response to where you got an opportunity to respond rather than react. And that mindfulness is that. So I had to teach myself that, and I had to keep through different therapies and whatever. Meditation. I was able to expand it further and further to now I can ask myself. Now I know the visceral response. I get hit with the response. I feel it, and I know where that could go. And I ask myself the question: is it in reality? It's almost in a millisecond now. So I don't have to go there anymore. And I trained my mind through various different types of therapy, and it was honestly, man, ketamine is medically induced transcendental meditation. I know that now because I've been able to do it through meditation, through the float tank, through peak experiences. I can go outside right now and I can look up at the stars or something about it. It'll just take me to that place for 5 seconds, right? I know it now, but in retrospect, I didn't. Because I know what it feels like, I can go there. You got to get something that pushes you to that place. Nudges you, maybe you don't need to be pushed. I needed to be pushed.
That space you were talking about, huge, and people don't understand that. It gives you the space between a reaction and a response.
Mm-hmm.
That's everything. Because look, our life is only decisions. Our life is one big bowl of decisions. Everything. We're here right now because of decisions we've made.
Yep.
Right.
Hands
so
down.
what if you can make better decisions? And meditation helps you to make better decisions. It gives you that space to respond instead of be so reactive to everything. And you know, and even physiologically, right? It grows your brain.
It does.
Gray matter, your prefrontal cortex, all of that. It grows your brain. It literally makes you smarter.
Yeah, it does.
I can attest it. Look, I never used to be a reader. I started meditating. All of a sudden, I had this crazy just interest in reading.
Mm-hmm.
I never read a book in my life. Not even during school, from cover to cover. That wasn't me. If I had a test on something, I'd be like, yeah, what's going to be on the test? You know, that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
I never wanted to read for fun. I still don't read, fictional books. But all of a sudden, I had this crazy interest in books and books that things that I was going through right now. And I read every day, and I just read books, and it's like, this is a new person right here. Yeah. I never had these interests before.
So that was meditation that brought that out.
Exactly. You literally turn into somebody that as somebody else. Yeah. And that somebody else is who you really are. And you're letting go of that old program. So the new program reads, the new program doesn't drink. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The new program has completely different I don't even know how to say it. Thoughts, actions, behaviors, completely different. Yeah. The things I would have done back there are the opposite of what I would do now.
It's hard to recognize that person, like, but it allows me to give grace to people that are still stuck, because we were just talking about it tonight. We got this Act Now group that I'm a part of. You've met some of the people in the podcast, and we're, I remember when I was so right about everything, and I was like, there was nobody could tell me I was wrong. I couldn't go to that me and say, hey, you might want to, not say that or not do that thing, because I wouldn't listen. Like, I was in fight or flight. I didn't have access to what it was that made me human. Like, all the human experiences that I had, where I grew and consciously I wanted to be better, and I didn't want to be my father, and I didn't want to, all those things became inaccessible. And when I understood that, I started to understand other people. So I know where to jump off in the conversation now. Like, oh, wait, there's nothing that can be done here because they're at that place, or I can feel me getting to that place. And I'm like, I got to bow out of this for now. I got to go take that breath. And it's that breath, that space that gives, it's really that quick, this is what your life is predetermined by, is your ability to navigate within that space right there. And if you can, it's going to be okay. If you can't, it's still going to be okay, but it's going to be a different kind of okay. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not going to like the okay you're always going to be hitting that brick wall wondering, I know these things. Why can't I just be better? Why does this always happen to me? You know what I mean? Why?
I got to tell you something. You have really got space and patience, because some of the stuff you post on your Facebook and the comments that I see on there,
shit.
Those comments, I wouldn't even go in. Right now, where I am in my life, I wouldn't even go in there. Like, I see comments, I see people that are so off base, right? Yeah. So all the way off base with what they're saying. But I know me adding myself into that mix you're going to come out dirty. And it's not worth it to mess up your inner energy and to bring you down to engage in a conversation, which nobody's going to be the winner. Right. You got to pick your battles wisely, right? When someone's saying certain things, that no matter what you say, no matter what facts you lay down, they're not going to, it doesn't matter.
They're out there to throw something at you. They're not trying to receive anything. Yeah. And that's me working out. Like, when I do that, that's my going to the gym. I go to the gym too, but that's my spiritual gym. So if I want to make sure that I'm never going to have to suffer at the expense of the neural pathways being closed, I'm at the point now where, and it took a long time to get there, because I knew that I would be dirty. Like, I knew that I couldn't, it wasn't so much, I didn't fear anything except for my reaction to it and how far I might go on some dumb, you know what I mean? Like, so once it took a while for me to really stick my neck out and go in public again. And especially from my old neighborhood, because I knew that everybody had different opinions than me. But some of the things that are happening now, like some of the people that talk to me behind the scenes, it's a beautiful thing. Some people will never change. And I'm not here to change anybody, but I think I have a responsibility. If I can say things that somebody might latch onto and it might help them, then I should be there. But there's times where I just got to bail out. I know this person, I can't say anything to them. this isn't there. I can't even illustrate anything to anybody else in a back and forth with this. I'm out. You know what I mean? You go ahead and do your thing. And if you find somebody who wants to go at it with you, great. You guys do your thing. But this conversation, it's nothing that can be had. There's no value to it. So I've gotten real good at, I've slipped a couple times, only twice. There's been twice where these and it's not really bad either, but where I'm like, man, I could have done better. You know what I mean? There were a couple of trolls out there that this one guy talked about our nonprofit, and that pissed me off. Like that was it. And I realized, oh, when he starts talking about the where you're helping people, you there's some kind of like ego attached to it. So he really helped me, because I was like, there should be no ego attached to that. You should be able to brush that off. And I learned from it. So it was valuable, but it was at the point where I was like, I called him a bit, you know what I mean? Like I shouldn't have. I let myself down, but I learned.
You know what? It's a trip, and going through this whole process of growth and expansion and all this other stuff. You think you're at a certain place, and then something or someone let you know that you are not as advanced as you think you are.
Get back to work.
Right. Right? Someone to hit you from just a haymaker from out left field, and you're not expecting it, and you react to it like boom, like bait, just like bam, I'm in. And then you're like, oh my God, what did I just do? I need to do some work with that. So, the universe is always gonna let you know where you need work, for sure. And it's always we're always a work in progress, right? We are human beings.
It doesn't stop. It
doesn't stop, but you can grow, and we're always expanding if you choose to do that.
Humans like to think there's an end game, because we're taught there is. Win this. Here's this thing. Go get that shiny thing. Go get that money. Go get the woman. Get the house. There's things. We're taught to go after things, and that when you get that thing, it's a tangible finish, right? And then you realize real quick there's no finish, because you keep wanting more. And that's in the spiritual life. People want there to be an end game. They want to hit a point, and they want to live in nirvana for the rest of their days on earth. No, it's not like that. And when you embrace, non-attachment, some people don't like that word, but I embrace impermanence, right? I know that everything's going to continue to shift, and I got to embrace that. If my kid gets sick, I can't fall off the deep end and just freak out. No, I got to embrace the fact that, okay, there's this condition, there's something in here for us. Let's work through this together. It's a different kind of life that you get to live when you recognize that there's no permanence to this. Things are going to consistently change, and you got to roll with it, or else you're no good to anybody, yourself included. Right. But you can't, I always use the example, if my son was to fall to cancer, or my daughter or whatever, who am I to say that wasn't supposed to happen, and there's not value in what we might go through in this suffering together? I hate to think that way, but I couldn't be there for him if I thought that we were cheated out of life. You know what I mean? Right. Like if that's the attachment to the idea that my son should be healthy and my daughter should be healthy and I should be good and I should have this and this and this and this. So it's nonsense, it's nonsense. And when you let it go, you stop. Well, I mean, we're just talking and other people are listening, but you stop thinking about all those things that I wanted. I don't want them anymore. Like I feel life is moving in a direction now that I would have loved when I was younger. And now I'm like, no, I don't want. I'm avoiding some things like the plague. No, I don't want to do that thing there. I'm staying away from that. You there, Mo?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna have to move positions because my phone is. Let me see if this can reach. Hold on. My phone battery.
While you're doing that, I'm gonna see if. I'm horrible at getting comments. I try to get to them after, but
yeah, get to them real quick, and I'm gonna readjust myself. So I can plug my phone in.
Oh, you got a Love Over Fair page?
Yes, Tammy, I got a Love Over Fair page, right?
Yeah, we'll have to.
Monk Eternal.
Okay, yeah, I get it. I got Monk Eternal on Instagram, right?
And Facebook too.
Facebook
I
too. Okay.
got a new page there. Okay, now I'm good to go, man.
All right.
And I'm rolling. I'm plugged in.
Yeah. So I forgot what I was even talking about now, but it's cool to
You're
be
checking the comments. Did you? Is there any comments?
Yeah, I can't even find them. I'm horrible. Like I don't even know where to go.
Okay.
Without screwing things up. Are you able to? Let me see.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
not the tech guy.
Neither am I. Oh yeah. No, there's a bunch of comments. I can't. Hey, sorry everyone. Well, I'll get to them. I promise. And you're on there too, so you can go back in and address people too after the fact if you want. Because I know there's going to be some that came from California. There's some that are out here in Detroit. I think you're going to have a lot of fans after this.
You were talking about what's important. What's important to me now is so different. You know, I used to have the car with the big rims and all that BS. Yeah. I mean, that's all it is, you know, and just like wanting pats on the back for everything that I've done, right? Yep. Wanting pats on the back because I got chicks and cars and whatever I'm doing, you know what I'm saying? Clothes. Like clothes aren't important. No, cars aren't important. I mean, it's like, what? Like, that's where I was. I'm like, this is crazy. And you know, it's crazy.
You were right. You know, because where you are now, you look at you then, there was nothing else but that. And you probably could, if somebody came at you with some, you know, you might, with some spiritual shit, miss me with that. You know what I mean? You get out of there, you dumbass. You don't know what life is. You know what I mean? Like, right. And you believed it. I believed it. Like, I believed that life was that. What I had been taught from the third trimester till 3, that's what life was. And it took, man, I look and I'm like, I can't even, like, I for a long time, I judged myself, and that you can't do that. You can't judge yourself. You just like you can't judge other people. But for a while, I was in the same way I was abused as a kid and neglected. I was neglecting that part of myself that bottled up when I was forced to become a man at a really young age. So I was judgmental towards that part of me. For all that part of yourself is doing is trying to protect you. Like when those neural pathways close up and you suffer trauma, it's a defense mechanism. It's not trying to hurt you. It's there to protect you in an environment that's tumultuous. And then you grow up, if you're lucky, right? And you get out of that environment, but that's everything's still protection. You know, that part of the brain doesn't know anything but survival. It's never evolved beyond that. So when you get stuck there, well, that's what you're doing constantly. And it's fascinating to know, like I read Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And when I could feel the mechanisms he was talking about. Like I could actually put them in my brain. I know when they're happening now. That book did that for me because I didn't know before. I just knew what it felt like. And to know that, okay, so when I get triggered, right? This part of the brain shuts down. It's the Brodmann section of the brain. It shuts down. Same part that shuts down when you have a stroke. It's gone. It's offline. Over here, you got the Broca section, which lights up, which when they were doing these fMRIs on these patients, they're not looking at anything, right? They're in a contained environment. This part of the brain is only responsible for taking immediate imagery and passing it up to the brain, or the higher parts of the brain for processing. So what was happening is this shuts down. You're living the experience in real time. It's happening. Like the experience is happening. There's nothing. It's a truth that's happening. And I didn't even know it. Like I didn't even know I was in pain or anguish. I had no idea what was going on. And these people don't in life. They don't know. They just got triggered. That's why I write a lot of times. I like to write these long posts. Because I like it anyway. But a lot when it goes political, I want to see where people get off. So I'll put these little trigger points. And I'll know where you jumped off, and it helps me understand you better. Like this is where you got scared and you felt you had to defend yourself when you weren't being attacked. And it's fascinating to know that it helps me deal with people better. It helps me sit in that space and hear some of the shit that comes out of people's mouths. where, the gut response is to shut it down, let me over intellectualize you in this moment and make you look stupid, or let me call you some this, some that, and tell you what a bad person you are in front of everybody. You know what I mean? Like, there's no value in that. You can't change a person by trying to change them. You know what I mean? You got to sit in that space and take me personally. I got to take me as a white man in America. I think it's important for me to take some lumps, right? Like, it's what it is. So but I couldn't do it if I didn't know that. If I couldn't look at a person and see when their eyes go dark, I couldn't do it. Like, there's no way. And if I hadn't experienced it myself and come out on the other side, there's no way I'd still be out there just being a person, being a human, a regular, normal human being.
I think the big deal that really meditation can help you with is not suppressed emotions, but repressed emotions, right? These are things these are here to protect us. These are things that are so bad, we don't even know we're pushing them down.
Right. It's crazy.
Right. There's events that could happen to you when you were young that you don't even know about because you pushed them down. It was too painful.
Yeah.
So now you have all this emotion, like you read the emotion code and all that stuff, right? You have all this emotion that's just down there, and it has to express itself somehow, right? Yeah. It has to, and then it'll just go back down. So, you explode and go crazy on somebody, overreact. That's just emotions trying to express themselves that we didn't even know about. Like, how did I overreact like so much and it wasn't even that big a deal? Yeah, it's like an earthquake building up pressure, right?
Yep.
So not only do we have suppressed emotions, which are things that we push down on purpose, like I don't want to deal about it, I don't want to deal with it, I don't want to deal with it, I don't want to deal with it. That type of, we have things that could happen to us before we were even born that's in there.
And it does.
That's why when I'm doing my meditation, like years into my meditation, I had all this movement. It was emotion. It was energy and emotional baggage being purged. It was the craziest. It was Vince, when I tell you, it was the craziest thing that I ever experienced. Like, not on something. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, I'm sober. I'm just. And the crazy part about it is I didn't learn what actually this was. I think it's pronounced Krias. I didn't know what this was till just recently. I had this experience years ago. So for a whole year, I was having this weird. I'll give you the weirdest things that happened to me. So one time I was laying in bed and my head did a whole rotation from one side.
Some exercise.
From one side. Yes.
Wow.
Like The Exorcist, right? By itself. Because the energy goes like this, right? So I lay down and my whole head rotated to one side. But during meditation, I would have really strong jerks. Like my head would just do that. What I come to find out was these were blockages. So the energy was trying to move, right? And it was hitting something, which was causing my body to move.
Okay.
So one time I was sitting there and my stomach started, like I was belly dancing. My stomach was doing that. No joke, right? All the way in, all the way out, just rolling. No pain, no nothing. It's rolling like this for 10, 15 minutes. And I'm tripping. I'm in meditation. It's hard for me not to think about what's going on right now, right? But I'm like, this is crazy. So after that was done, the jerking, a lot of jerking, it stopped after that incident with my belly. So just like 2 years ago, this woman, her name is Christina Lopes. Have you ever heard of her?
Yeah, I have.
It's a heart alchemist is what she goes by. But she always talks about spiritual stuff and meditation and all this other stuff.
She would do stuff with Greg Braden?
I'm not sure. She was who's the other guy? There's another guy, Ron Doherty. Is it? I don't know.
I was just curious.
She explained what I experienced to the T.
That's crazy when somebody does that.
Right. She said, you guys might not believe me, right? She started out with something like that. But she said, during my meditation and my Kundalini awakening, my belly was doing this. And I was like, oh my God.
Damn.
That's exactly what happened to me. So not knowing about what meditation does, it benefited me so much because these experiences, now I didn't talk myself out of, no, I didn't have this experience. I just had this experience because I thought I was supposed to have this experience. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So I experienced not knowing what it was.
Yeah,
yes,
pure.
not knowing what it was. And if you can't tell me that I didn't have these experiences,
right?
Because it happened. And that's okay. Like I said, I was already feeling the compassion. Then I had these physical things happen to me. And that's when I knew. That's when I really, really knew. I'm like, there's something so much happening while in my meditation. So much is going on. So much healing is going on. So much purging is going on through my meditation. And it almost like put a stamp on it. It's like, this is so real. You know, people think, oh, meditation, it doesn't do. I had firsthand experience this on a physical level, on an emotional level, on every single level, simply by sitting down and getting still. That's it. I wasn't chanting. I wasn't doing anything. I sat down and got still, and I did it every single day.
How long did because I'm sure, because I've had those experiences, but it's taken. So when I did the purging, like you're talking about, it was through ayahuasca. So I did the ayahuasca, and then I didn't need anything. That's 4 crackers. I was purging and I was contorting and doing all these weird things, and I would get scared. Like it would start getting dark, and then I'd hear these spirits or whatever that they would come over and soothe me, and it felt like things were getting ripped out of my body. And then I'd be real calm. Then they'd take off. I say that they do this little laugh, and I was like, what the fuck? But it was like I was puking all night, but there was nothing in there in the morning. There was nothing. I was like, and I know I got all kinds of shit stored in here, and I haven't done yoga like I'm supposed to. And, you know, body keeps the score. That's what Bessel talks about from a psychological standpoint, physiological standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint, there's all this shit that's stored in me. And when I did ketamine therapy on Monday. You know, I'm still very much a patient, even though I know some things. When I recorded it, when I go out, like I'm consciously, I'm there. I'm ready to go on that journey. There's no fear in being ripped out of my 5 senses. Like I've gone to that space. I've navigated around there, and I'm not afraid of it. Like there's no fear at all. I know the benefits of diving in and coming back. But my body doesn't. So it was real interesting to watch. Like my body would tense up. I'm calm. Like me, psychologically, spiritually, I'm ready to go. But my body tenses up, and then it starts doing these things, trying to get the hell out of there, and it can't because the drug or the root is too strong, and it can't. So that's what I needed to force myself into that space because I was too controlled, too egotistical. Even in the float tank, I'll feel myself going into that space. Sometimes I can disappear. A lot of times I'm kicking out of it, and it's not like it's second. Oh, and then I'm like, damn, you know what I mean? Now I'm just gonna lay here and float and be pissed, but. Yeah, I still haven't had the ability to go into that space without. I can go transcendental, but I haven't had that full on, you know, without the help of ayahuasca, or I've only done it once, or ketamine is the therapy that I do monthly, and it's helped. It's helped. Because
I mean, like I said, I didn't know, this was so new to me. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know this even happened during meditation. You know what I'm saying? So
I think it's amazing that you were able to sit through it, though. That's a you know, I don't know that I could have, like where I was in that space back then. Like if that started happening to me, I'd be like, I don't know if I could. I might freak out. You know, like that's something that I mean that's like a calling. There's for you to be able to do that. And not knowing is one thing, but to not know and still let it happen, like that's there was a calling there for you, like, you know, that's a monk, you know, that's your thing. you got called and you answered it.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I like for a long time I wouldn't even talk about it, and then I'm like, well, I'm not the only one that has these experiences. When I started to hear other people having these experiences, I'm like, I'm not the only one that has these experiences. So just, you know, I talk about it because if it does happen to somebody, they know it's good. Everything is good about it. You know what I'm saying? It's not no witchcraft. It's not no voodoo. It's not any of that. It's just a natural thing that happens when you really get to that space of being present. when you really get to where life truly exists only in the present moment, people don't understand that. And I'm not perfect. I struggle with it all the time, projecting and regretting, but I can come out faster now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you don't have to suffer through it.
Right. I can come out, I can come back, like, just come on back, be present, be present, be present, be present. Right. I don't have to go on these long, depressing binges. Right. Where, you know, you're down and out for months and years, even.
Years.
People get,
the whole first part of my life was that. I thought I was okay. You know, I was out in Hollywood as a young guy and living that life. Right. But when I look back, the risks that I would take so nobody could ever call me poor again, like dealing with cartels, literally, like the shit that you'll see in the book. It's like, there's no reason on God's green earth that I should be here right now. The risk that I took because I was too insecure to ever be called poor again. I was going to be an artist, but not a starving one. And I was going to have the party, you know what I mean? And it almost killed me on multiple occasions. But man, you got me thinking about some other stuff. Now it's like the things we do to offset those insecurities, to pretend that we're to everybody else, right? Not to us, like, because we don't matter in this. We've already said, fuck us. We don't matter. We don't care what we think about ourselves. We need this around us
we need approval.
You know, and out in Hollywood, they'd pat me on my back for my dysfunctions. You know, that was where everybody got to be dysfunctional, and it was a cool thing. Oh, he's fucking crazy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's not good. That's fucked up. That's why I bailed. I was like I
said, I was looking for approval from everyone.
Everyone.
I didn't have approval for myself. So people saying, "Oh man, look, this cat got it going on. This cat, look at him. He's this and that." You know, that's what I was looking for.
You're like, maybe I am. Maybe
none of it meant anything.
No.
It doesn't mean anything.
No.
It means that you have a lot of healing to do. You have a lot to work on. And don't get me wrong, compliments are nice, but you know where they stand now, right?
Yeah.
You know, you take it like, thank you, you know, I appreciate that, but it doesn't. You don't have to identify with that, right? When you can be in a neutral place, then that means when people say bad things about you as well, it doesn't affect you.
Right. You're unattached. You're unattached.
Right. So compliments are good, and I'll take them, right? But I'm not going to base my whole existence around getting approval.
No, you know when they matter. Like I like to do things behind the scenes now and put it out there, and I do like to watch the result. I don't need to take credit for it, you know. And that's how I get that's my compliments. I don't need compliments. I just like to see if the work I do has a positive effect. And, you know, it does, not always. Sometimes people don't like the shit I have to say or whatever, but that's okay too. You know what I mean? I don't have to be attached to that either. I just have to stand in my truth. And that's what this book, I think, can help a person do. If you read that, you look at the principles, you can ask yourself some real simple questions, you know, about my life right now. Like I can look at my life right now. I can look at this and I can answer those. I don't need a spiritual background. I don't need to be versed in the Bible. I don't need to be versed in the Quran. I don't need to, you know, anything about the Buddha. I don't, none of that. I don't need any of that. I can look at this and I can ask these questions and I can say real simply, do I think I'm living right? You know what I mean? That's the beauty of this thing right here. And I hope I want it to get everything it deserves. Like it's one of those things, you know, and I know a lot of people from my spiritual community are tuned in right now, and I would like to see this thing go to where it should be. It's like when I read it, I'm like, man, that's so simple. I'm like, he just nailed it. I'm like, he just nailed it. I'm like, I'm going to go write a 3-page long post on Facebook that no one's going to read now. You know, but no, it's just there to anybody who's watching this right now. Get it and read it and keep it with you, because it's just that thing. But yeah, no, I wanted to have success, and you know, you want it to too, but it's not for the same reason you would have wanted it for 20 years ago. Like now,
right.
You think it's good you can do.
Yes, I wanted to get, like, we had this conversation yesterday. I wanted to get into institutions. I wanted to get into people, young kids that are right at the crossroad. Which way am I going to go? Right.
So important.
And the adults that haven't healed yet, the adults that are still them young, hurt children in penitentiaries, in rehab centers. That's the type of thing. That's where I want to put these books, right? Because I know just that in this, I started with love and I ended with fear, because those are fear is just the absence of love. So the love is the biggest part in this book. It has the most, I talk the most about it, because love is unconditional, period. It's just where are you directing this love, right?
Yeah.
So I self-love. I'm directing this unconditional love to myself. Love for others. I'm directing this unconditional love for others. And I really think, man, I thought about this before, and a lot of people have a hard time loving themselves. But listen to this. I think when they have children, they love themselves through the children.
Yes.
They're finding a way to unconditionally love themselves as their children.
Because it is you.
Like, it is you. You are actually loving yourself now. And I think that's why so many people can have that unconditional love for that child, and they can't have it for themselves, because indirectly they are loving themselves through their children. But we need to learn how to love ourselves directly.
Well, that. Oh, go ahead.
No, I would say, and then you can spread, turn that around and love the people in your life, not only your children, but your spouse and your neighbors and just people out on the street, right? We have to have, you can only give what you have. You have to tap in here. You have to love yourself in order to really give it the way you're supposed to be giving it. That's what we're here for.
And if you're giving parts of yourself, you're going to get partial people around you. It's codependence. It's not interdependence. You're going to create a codependent atmosphere, and it's going to be a constant, the first two levels of consciousness, this back and forth, this victim, victimizer, oppressor. You know what I mean? That's the first two levels. It's control, it's loss of control, and it just flips. It's constant until you step out of that. If you're lucky enough to, I was reading the percentage, and I don't know how they get these percentages, but they say that 86% of the human population will never ascend the first two levels of consciousness in any great length. And then it was something like only 10% will I think it was 10% will achieve. I can't remember how many levels of consciousness, but there's one before transcendence. And transcendence, only 2% of the population ever on the face of this planet. How they get the numbers, I don't know. But it was interesting to read because, the 2% that they're talking about where you get access to God consciousness is Jesus, Martin Luther King, people that. Right. Like, and when I'm reading it, I'm like, what?
Buddha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that makes sense. This will probably piss some people that are really religious off. I don't know if they watch this anyway, but so I don't know if you know about the Dead Sea Scrolls and the parts of the Bible that were left out of the King James version. But there was these scrolls that were discovered in, I think it was 1947, and you can read them in a book called the Nag Hammadi. It's like not its own Bible, but it's portions that were missing. And there's a book of Isaiah in there. And it talks about Jesus's younger life, and Jesus was raised by a group called the Essenes. They were only around for, I think, 4 centuries prior to Christ, and after the death of Christ, they disappeared. But it's said that the loving of God is exactly what you said. This father figure, right? The loving of God. Humans had at that time, it was Old Testament sacrifices, all that. And people hated themselves. You know what I mean? They had a real hard time loving themselves. So if you give yourself over to this God, which is actually you, right? Your higher self, this higher part of you, then you can love yourself again. But you got to give yourself over. And I think that's what happens with kids. Like, I gave myself over after I had that experience. I was able to give myself over to that love. And now when I'm telling my daughter, don't procrastinate, I can look at myself and say, I'm talking to me. I tell her I'm talking to me too, because I need to get better at that. But this is what I see in you. and you're teaching, and it's a beautiful thing. It's reciprocal. When it's not is when you get pissed and you fly off the handle and you know what I mean? Like that's a different thing. But when you recognize them as a mirror into yourself, it does that thing you're talking about. And it's the same with whatever if you got a God or you got the universe and you give yourself over to that force, you're giving yourself over to yourself. And eventually you spend enough time in that space, you'll get there. You'll start loving yourself. Like you said, you start seeing things differently. I mean, kids laughing it starts to sound different. Sun matters. You know what I mean? Like these little things, these little nuances, things sound differently. People don't piss you off like they used to. You know what I mean? People can just throw whatever they want on social media. You just don't see it. You're not oblivious to it, but it just doesn't have the power anymore. And it's simple steps, but man, anyway, I'm rambling. I'll let you,
you want to get into some of the questions on there?
Yes. Yeah. Let's do that. What do you want to, let's talk about some of, pick my mic up. I dropped the mic for you. Let's get to, what questions do you want to deal with?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Whatever is there. I mean, okay. Just if there's some questions there, we could get into them a little bit.
You know what? Yeah, let's talk about. I want to talk about Principle 8, failure. Your take on that. I think that's a very important, and it's again so simplified. You can just read this, and you don't have to think fail forward and wonder what that means, right? You don't have to do that. It's right there. It's etched out. So can you expand on that?
Yeah. So failure, we always think it's a bad thing.
Right. Yeah.
But there's really actually no such thing as failure. The only time I really think you can fail is if you quit, not change directions, but quit, right? There's a difference between changing the directions and quitting. So for instance, let's say I'm working my way towards something and it's really a struggle. And I get to a point where the struggle is not really worth it. Right. But that whole time, if I'm present, I'm learning valuable information.
Yeah.
That whole time to that point where I say, well, I'm going to change directions. Right. That is not a failure. Like, are you kidding me? Right. This is important in your life. Whatever you needed to learn in this little piece of time, whatever you had going is valuable. So you needed that, whatever that is. Okay. You get to a point where he's like, okay, well, I need to change directions. Well, let's change directions. But that information that you acquired from that time that you were working at something, that's in your pocket now. You're going to need that later. Right? You're going to need that later. This is something that you learned along the way.
Yeah.
So now you're changing directions. Now you're doing something else. Well, whatever you're doing on this other end, if you believe me, whatever you learned during that failure is going to come back up in your life at some point.
So
that is valuable information and valuable learning that takes place during a failure. And anybody that's ever been successful said they failed 1,000 times before they got it right, right? They failed 1,000 times. I don't even like using the word because
right.
Any inventor, right? Just look at all the Tesla and how many times they failed to create something so amazing. It wasn't a failure. Every time it didn't work, they learned from that and they changed directions. That's all they did. There's no failure there.
So this is a hard question, and it's based on that. So what if your failure, and I know I work these things out in my head and I try to play out scenarios, but what if your failure is just something so gut wrenching that you can't forgive yourself for? So what if it involves victimizing another human being, just something so reprehensible? Because you're talking about getting this into prisons. How do they come to grips with something that from a human perspective is just so reprehensible and vile? How do you, because you spiritually, you got to, right? Like that's, you have to, if not, you're in hell.
Well, I talk about forgiveness in there as well.
Right.
Book,
Yep.
And forgiveness is key.
Of
Forgiveness
everything.
is key to freedom, right? And forgiveness has nothing to do with forgiving an act that someone may have done to you.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is letting go of it completely, right? The emotional charge to it, right? The victim identity, letting go of all of it. And it doesn't matter if that person apologizes or not. The healing takes place on your end.
That's interesting,
right?
Letting it go, like just get out. I don't have to think about this anymore.
Right. So in order to let it go, you cannot have a perpetrator.
Right.
They mean nothing in this equation. Forgiveness has nothing to do with someone saying, when you go up and say, someone says, I'm sorry, you don't wait for that. That means nothing.
Right.
Forgiveness is forgiving the whole unconscious act that you had a role in.
Right.
Right? Forgiving the whole act. Knowing that you are a co-participant in this thing, whatever happened. And both of you were where you were at that time. So there's nothing to forgive as far as another human being. Forgiveness is the letting go of the entire thing. So it has no attachment to you anymore. You release that energy, that blame, that victim identity, whatever you are holding on to, you're allowing it to go. That's forgiveness.
That's Christ-like, and I act now. Our agenda is to dismantle systemic racism, right? Some people don't believe it exists. That's okay. You'll get there. But how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it with this? Because I always tell, it's predominantly Black in my group, right? And I'm a white guy, obviously. So what's happening here in America is that Black people are they're being called upon to be almost Christ-like, and it's not fair, right? But that's what's being, to be Martin Luther King, and that was my idea of Christ. But he helped me understand the teachings of Christ. That was a hero of mine because I couldn't understand parables, but he showed me what it was to live in that space. So this is where trauma exists on a daily basis, right? Like it can, you can look in every corner and you might think that this person's looking at you sideways because of this, and this. It's a real thing that happens. How do you apply the principle?
So when this whole George Floyd thing, don't get me wrong, I was angry.
Right.
And I was more so angry at the unconsciousness of it all.
That's sad. That makes me sad. Like
you know what I'm saying? That part. Well, I'm like, how can you be so unconscious as to treat another God being this way and think it's okay?
Yeah.
How could you be that unconscious? How can you not know that you're hurting yourself right now?
Mm-hmm.
I thought we have evolved farther than this. That's the part that really upset me. I'm looking at all this take place and people like justifying it. I'm like, how can we be in this? I thought we were more advanced than that as far as consciousness goes, because I'm looking at it all like I can see it all clearly. I can see it all. I can see everything is clear as day to me. And I'm like, how can you not see it? How can you be so unconscious as to, for one, just do these acts and then whatever your program is justifies that, whatever it is. It's like I said, the more closer you are to yourself, the more you're gonna reflect love in your life. And that is not what I seen. That's not what I experienced. And when you see it on mass levels, like when the hate at the Capitol the other day, when you see mass groups of people in this very low vibrational, unconscious manner, you're just going, dang.
What the?
Right. How come? I just thought we were just like the humanity is like the love, the compassion is void, is absent. And I'm like, that's when you know you're not living your truth. That's when you know you're so far removed from who you actually are. And that's the sad part about it, because if you were really close to who you really are, then none of these actions would even take place. It would be impossible, right? Because you moved from a different place. You'll never see me involved in a violent act, hitting people or doing something violent to people because I have an idea that I want to get across. You see what I'm saying?
That's
right.
Extreme low vibration.
Exactly. And then you get all this together in big crowds, and the worst of the worst comes out. And you know about mob mentality.
Oh yeah.
It's like once that you get sucked into that lower vibration, now you're doing things that you normally wouldn't do. Right.
Glass break, that something happens, and then all of a sudden there's this thing, this Pavlovian thing.
You know, and I've been there in my own life. You know, we get into it with some people, just kind of chilling. Next thing you know, you stomping on someone's head. It's like, how did you go from this to this so fast?
So fast.
It just like sucks you in, right? You're almost in a state where you're available to any energy that you're around.
And that's a darkness that people need to admit. Like for me, as a white man in America, we're given labels, right? We're talking about something that's happening out there. We're spiritual, and I think we've evolved past that, but we live in this space. So there was a point where I had to say, I've never been intentionally racist, but I've let some things happen because it's how it was. I did some joke slides, some shit that I never said nothing about, you know, the misogynistic shit with women. And, you know, and I look back on that and I'm like, how could I have been that guy? But I know how. I know how, you know, and when we say how, well, we know how. And I don't know how to fix it other than putting things like this out, you know what I mean? And like, that's the steps that need to be taken. I was bawling when I was writing this thing on difference in experience. And then I really delved into the life of a terrorist who in an active jihad cut somebody's head off in a cave. And I really started writing about the hell that this life must have been. And I was really getting into that experience. Like I will if somebody commits suicide. That's, you know, as an actor, I would always try to get there, but there's a darkness that I can't get to. There's a place that because I haven't lived that experience that put me there. No matter how hard I try, no matter how skilled I think I am at empathizing and then using, I can't get to that darkness. Just like I can empathize with Black people in America. But I can't get to that experience because I don't know what that's like. I don't know what it's like to have my lineage stolen from me and then live in a place where now we seem to be evolved, but the people won't even admit, because they're traumatized too. So they can't even admit that this happened, but it's so obvious, right? Like it's to know that the human mind works that way, is scary. It's scary. And it's sad because when I was writing this the other day and I'm living in this guy's shoes, everything up to being in the cave where that thing happened, that I couldn't get there, but I could get to it. And then I could picture my family being blown up by these bombs that we didn't ask to, and everybody around me teaching me how that's the devil. And you got this God. And if you do this thing, you can get out of here. That's your ticket out. You know what I mean? How could I not believe that? Right. I believed in Santa until I was 12, you know,
right.
So it's, how could you not? And then if you're truly going to you're going to walk that path, you got to look to those people and those people, we're all those people, right? We're all one. And we got to recognize that there's a darkness in us. And if we were in those shoes, we might do that thing. That's hard. I don't want to admit that. You know what I mean?
No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. We would do those things. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, one of my ex-girlfriends back in the day, it was right after 9/11. She was like, "Oh man, those Middle Eastern people," and she was talking like that, right? She was like, "They're this evil. They're this and they're that." I said, "Let's flip things around. What if you're here in America? And they come here and they set up on your streets and they just start shooting up stuff, right? They start accidentally hitting some of your family members, right? Your family members have nothing to do with the war. They're running over your streets. They're tearing stuff up. They're blowing buildings up. and your family's dying behind it, what would you do? What would you do? Would you pick up something? Yep. Everybody in this country would pick up something and try to fight back. That's what they're doing over
at the
there.
White House. They're on some petty shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what they're doing over there. A lot of those people that join in, they're just to the point where they're over here killing us. We got to fight back.
Yeah.
We got to fight back. These are people that watch their kids die unnecessarily. They weren't even involved in it. And if we go over there and just set up shop, what would you do? What if someone came on your street and set up shop? What would you do? You got to understand that this is their reality. And if we wouldn't take it if it was the other way around.
No
matter what.
Absolutely not. And we would justify anything. We would justify storming the Capitol. You know what I mean? Like if we felt infringed upon.
Right.
That's the... It's crazy. I was literally bawling when I was, and I'm positing the question, have you really thought about that? And I'll drop it sometime soon. It's going to be in the book, but it's, have you really thought about it? And I keep asking that, have you really thought about it? And as I'm asking the question, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, fuck, this is painful. Like it's painful to think that there's so much pain in the world. I just, like you said, I thought we were too evolved. Last year, I took my kids to Auschwitz. I wanted to, I like to experience different places, but I want them to learn some things too. So, right after that, we went to Legoland in Denmark. You know what I mean? So we broke it up, but I was like, okay, if we're going to go, I don't want you to be afraid, but I want you to understand that this is possible when human suffering goes unattended. This is what is possible. And my daughter asked me, we were standing right in front of the wall where they murdered people. And it was really, it's an experience. And she asked, could it ever happen again? And I said, no, honey, I think we're too evolved as humans. It's not, we're too connected now. And I just can't see that it would ever be possible again. But still, you need to pay attention to humans. That means even the person that you want to judge and say they're a bad person, they're suffering. They're suffering and they're acting that way because they're suffering. And we have to pay attention to that. Adolf Hitler was suffering. And there was a bunch of people behind him, kind of like in America right now, that are suffering. And if we judge them for their suffering, their suffering becomes justified, right? And then it turns into that mob mentality, and you see what you saw at the Capitol. You know what I mean? Or you see what you see in the streets with Antifa, and you know what I mean? Like what's the bottom line? People are suffering. And the more we point at each other in these different, because we look different or we have different ideas, and the more we separate ourselves, the more our suffering becomes justified. Now we can sit in it. Like everybody that was bashing Donald Trump. I'm not a Donald Trump fan, but you weren't going to catch me calling him a shitbag or, the things that would come to my mind immediately. But I'm not going to go out there and say it because all I'm doing is adding to suffering. That's all I'm doing. Right. So I'm part of the problem now. Where do we get to that point where, and again, I'll go back to the book. Like, I really think it could be that thing. It's one of those things that, like the 4 agreements, I can't tell you how many of the copies of that book I give out. And this is simpler, it's right to the point. These are the types of things we can do. And, who knows what's going to happen, right? All we can do is stand in our truth and put it out there. And it's hard to live it, It's hard when things like this happen. George Floyd, like I said, PTSD. I've lived with it my entire life. I didn't know it. And then I became a study. That's how my brain works. Like I left and right are always communicating. So if I feel something, I want to know why. It's how I operate. When I see humans do something, I want to know why. Like I want to get into the nuance, what makes people do what they do. But with PTSD, I couldn't watch the George Floyd, the entire thing. I couldn't get very far in it. And then one day when they released all the body cam footage, and I was like, all right, I'm going to watch this whole thing. And when the cop was coming up to the vehicle, I saw George in there smiling. He's over there kind of talking to his boys and whatever. And he's smiling when he looks back. He doesn't know who's tapping on his window. And then I saw his eyes, because my eyes have gone like this several times and it's almost killed me. I saw him go dark. They went blank right there. And as soon as he said, hey, don't shoot me, Mr. Officer, I knew he was there. Like, okay, so if they were trained in trauma, they would have known, okay, this guy's, he's having a flashback right now. I got to sit him down and I just got to let him talk. let them talk, so that part of the brain starts to feel safe again. And none of that had to happen. You know what I mean? Like, and that killed me. Like to see that and to know, like I felt it. Like and I was like, man, that could happen to me. It could have happened to me multiple times throughout my life when I was out there acting a fool and I wasn't thinking right. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, fuck, we need to learn so much more. We really need to delve into the experience of other people and get curious. Like, why are we so mad that people have different experiences? You know what I mean? Like, why is that? Why can't we just be curious about it? Because we're fear-based. That's why it's love over fear. We're fear-based. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like that's really the trick, right? Like, let's convert that shit, because that fear it's gonna be the end of all of us if we don't do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest culprit, and all fear is, like I said before, is the absence of love. It's just like there's no such thing as darkness. It's just the absence of light, right? That there is no such thing as darkness. You take a match and boom, darkness is gone, right? You put a light in the darkness and it's gone.
Yeah,
it's just the absence of it, right? There's no such thing as cold. It's just the absence of heat. There is no such thing as fear. It's just the absence of love.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a strong place to possibly to end this. That couldn't have wrote that better.
All right, man. I appreciate you, man. I'm looking forward to seeing reading your book.
It's interesting too. You know, it's
gonna be some metaphysical, crazy, in depth. I already know what it's gonna look like.
It's because it's commercial, right? There's a commercial feel because it was crazy, but it's all bringing it back to the soul. Like that I was out there searching like you were for those pats on the back, and turns out they weren't pats on the back. They were, you know, they were slices. Like that's what they were. They were cuts. They were scarred. Right. You know, and when I had my son and I felt that love, I was like, there's the truth. You know what I mean? Like it's right. And then I thought back to my stepdad, who I rejected, you know, because I was the man of the house when he came in, and he's a, you know, Cherokee, you know, relates to the indigenous, you know, lover of the earth and peace, and I just kind of rejected all that because I was in a tough neighborhood, and I can't do nothing with that shit, right? I gotta, and I can go back to him with a smile on his face when he said, "One day you'll know," you know what I mean?
Right, that's amazing.
And I wrote a little story about it. It's in the book too, on my page. And
when is this book coming out, young man?
It's this year. It'll be out this year. It's written longhand. I gotta transcribe it, and I gotta detach myself from some of it. You know what I mean? So I might bring in an editor to kind of help me do that, because it's like, you know, it's your baby, and some of it just don't belong there. Some of it I want to tell everything, and that's not what a story is. So. But it should be out. I'm hoping by the holidays. I'm hoping by late November, early December.
That's dope. I can't wait. And if anybody's on here, I'm on. I'm gonna go ahead and throw my monk_eternal on Instagram.
You can put it on the page too if you want. If you want to, I think I got you up there, but post it, because on this event it's yours too. So
okay.
So yeah, get this book. You got to get this book. It's if you say you're a non-reader, you're perfect. You're perfect, because it's. Go ahead.
Yeah, you could have read the book, the whole thing, and ate you some dinner during this whole conversation. You could have been done with it.
You could have asked a bunch of questions, and you probably would have been good. Like your whole life starts tomorrow now.
Yeah. But all right, brother. Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna come up with some theme. You know what? I'm gonna like go through this book with you, and we'll talk. We'll just take one principle at a time, and we'll relate it to life right now, and have you speak on it, and then we'll just chop it up back and forth. There's huge value in this thing. So I appreciate you for doing this. This is a necessary step that somebody had to take, and you took it. I'm already proud for what I know it's going to do, because this is that deal. But
all right. Well, thank you, brother.
Yep. Hey, it was my pleasure.
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right.
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody. I'll get to your questions. I promise. So will Monk. All right.